Hey there everyone, it's the year 2020 where we have another Fire Emblem character, Animal Crossing fans are getting excited over belly buttons, and New Jersey still doesn't let you pump your own gas. And guess what? We're still going over pointless Smash Ultimate facts. The series where I ramble on about stuff you've all told me or I've seen on my own. Stuff that may or may not be practical, who even cares anymore. So sit back and take notes. All of this will be on the test at the end of the year. And speaking of teachers, before we begin, I know some of you may be asking for my thoughts on the final DLC character, Byleth. And here are my thoughts. Oh. Okay. First fact of 2020 is by Nintendo. The idea of this fact is that in sudden death, Megalovania starts playing at a different part than normal. To check this out, let's look at when it normally starts. I'm sure most of us are knowledgeable of the core song by now, but in the Smash remix, the lick that we're all too familiar with goes on for only one phrase instead of two. Basically, it gets into the really big stuff quicker. This high-octane section begins 8 seconds into the remix, and repeats once before getting to the heart of the song. We see that here, in the real match, the song starts out with the Earthbound guitar synth solo. Then, 4 measures afterwards, we get into the juicy stuff. However, looky here when we get into sudden death. I do apologize if it's difficult to hear what with all the other noise going on in the match, but essentially, once sudden death starts, the song begins playing at this energetic section, right? It skipped that 7-second introduction, which was a lot less energetic. Curious, I decided to see whether or not this was a Megalovania exclusive thing. It is a DLC song, so to speak. I wouldn't have been surprised if they gave it special treatment. In my mind, they got rid of the intro because it didn't quite match the pacing of sudden death. You know, sudden death. It should be full of gusto from the start. The first song I thought of that I knew had a rather slow introduction, but did eventually get intense, was Engage the Enemy from Xenoblade Chronicles. It starts out with some ambience noises, before it gets into the descending piano chords about 6 seconds in. Of course, the normal match starts the song as it should. But I was shocked to find out that, in sudden death, the song started at the 6-second mark, at the descending piano chords. Personally, if anything, I would have thought it'd start at the 12-second mark, where all the guitar and percussion stuff hop in, but regardless, this is another example of a few seconds of the intro being cut for sudden death. Now, I'm in no position to say this is true for every song, but it seems logical that the game will skip any introductions to songs that are too slow when sudden death starts. I apologize if it seemed I went a bit too in-depth there. I am a composer after all, hence the beats in PK Beats. I even uploaded a piano composition of mine onto this channel, which you can check out if you so please. But enough about that. You're all here for Smash, right? So, speaking of sudden death. I did have an idea in my head while in sudden death. What does zoom do? When I tested it on the videos dedicated on Megastage, I kept landing within the safe zone. But I wasn't sure if this was just bad, or rather I guess good, luck, because of the stage's size. So I tested it on Temple and... So it seems that if you use zoom in sudden death, probably just on bigger stages, it's quite possible you'll get dropped down to the part of the stage that is now engulfed in flames, and is thus considered a blast zone. So I guess do be wary of that before you use zoom in sudden death. And before we move on from sudden death, Jord1 states that the stamina up spirit works in sudden death. And of course this is easy to test out. I just gave my hero the usual stamina up spirit, which you can see in effect at the start of the match. However, once sudden death started, both Hero and Marth were at 1 HP still. I didn't seem to do anything odd. The spirit was working before, so I can't say that this fact is true. It looks like the stamina up spirit doesn't actually work in sudden death. If there are other necessary steps to make this happen, please let me know in the comments, but from my testing I couldn't see it work. Oh, and quick tangent, but you probably saw me run against a ledge in this clip without falling off of it, right? This is called a ledge run, a mechanic I used to think was removed from the game. All you need to do is turn on A and B smash attacks. This, of course, makes it so when you press A and B at the same time, you perform a smash attack. Now all you've got to do is run, dash the other way where you slide kinda like this, and then input A and B at the same time during this animation. Afterwards, you'll keep running, but you won't fall off the ledge. Letting go of the buttons will cause you to go past the ledge though. If you do the input too early, you will perform a pivot forward smash. If you do them too late, you will perform a dash attack. And the timing is actually character dependent. For Hero, the timing is honestly incredibly generous. I can get it almost every single time. But for Ganondorf, I have a hard time doing it. It all depends on the length of their sliding turnaround animation. If said animation takes longer, you'll have an easier time getting the input in. With that out of the way, SoupyMilk619 states that spikes go through Magicant. Before I get into this, as a preface, you cannot go through the clouds of the stage, like you would for platforms. Yet, just as SoupyMilk stated, if you spike your opponent onto the stage, they'll go through the cloud. Now I'm not entirely sure why this would be, but I also feel like it is intentional. Maybe. At least something funky does go on. Watch, I'm doing my test against a K-roll at 150%. Notice how he doesn't quite get KO'd. Now watch me get the spike off stage at a considerably lower percent. K-roll gets KO'd, quite quickly actually. So it seems that the clouds sort of slow down the opponent when they pass through it. Look here, you can even spike them through two clouds at once in the center, and K-roll is living for way longer than he should. Some other things to note about this is that it doesn't happen when you spike grounded opponents. And it does work for final smashes that spike the opponent, like Greninjas or Mii Brawlers. As for an explanation, one thing did come to mind about the clouds, as how you can go through them from the bottom, but you can't go through them from the top like platforms. And a lot of stages are actually like this, the first one coming to mind being Halberd. But when I tested it there, nothing happened with the spike. My final possible idea is how, on the stage, there's obstacles that land on the centermost cloud, and eventually sink through it. Maybe this sinking through quality is what made the developers wish to add this spiking mechanic or something? I did try to read the Smash Wiki page on Magicant, but I didn't see anything about this. Oh, and one neat thing I did read on the page was that if you go into the camera and zoom in on Dungeon Man that walks along the bottom of the stage, you can see Brickroad, the dungeon-loving man who built and then became Dungeon Man. Next, in one of my past videos I went in depth about how the 1v1 multiplier works in training mode in regards to items. And in that section I mentioned how sometimes, if you use an item in your combo, the combo meter will turn red. At first I had brought this up thinking it was weird that the 1v1 multiplier didn't go away. It seems to somewhat recognize the item's existence, right? Well, according to Justin Roy, this isn't quite the case. When you go to the character selection screen of training mode, you can see your max combo for each character, or the largest combo number you got on the combo meter with that character. For some of my characters, that number is actually quite huge. This is thanks to a video I made a while ago regarding getting over 1 million on the combo meter. You can check that out by clicking the card in the top right of the screen now. But I digress. So really, whenever you land a combo, or rather something the combo meter considers a combo, you'll increase your max combo score. Now, I don't play Marth much, so his current combo score is quite low. I can easily increase this by using Dancing Blade, which the combo counter will show as an 8. Back to the selection screen, the max combo score is now 8 as well. However, when the combo number turns red, this means the number will not count towards your max combo record. I tested this again with Marth, whose current max is now 8. When I throw a Pitfall at Pikachu and use the same Dancing Blade combo, the score is 9. But since the combo is occurring while Pikachu is buried from the Pitfall, the counter is red. And sure enough, once I go back to the selection screen, Marth's max combo is still sitting pretty at 8. Next up, Miranda Tagliamonte states how on some stages the water level can be low enough to where some characters will stand, but others will swim. As I suggested, I tested this on Delfino Plaza with Joker and Kirby. I didn't notice anything odd with this part of the stage, neither Joker nor Kirby were swimming. However, when I got to this section, while Joker stood up in the water, it looked like Kirby was just barely swimming. He can even drown in the kiddie pool. One thing I was then curious about was how all this interacted with hydrophobic characters, ones who gradually take damage in water. Inkling was my first pick, since they're also the smallest character who fits this bill. When I got to this section of the stage, they were standing perfectly fine in the water, like Joker, not swimming like Kirby. And I guess because of this, they did not take gradual damage from the water. At first, I decided to see how size change affects this, and when I did, I saw a small Inkling stand in the water almost fully submerged. But once you jump out and then jump back in, you'll start to swim. And once you're in this state, then you'll start taking gradual damage. Not many stages have water in a kiddie pool like depth, so it's interesting to see all of this in action. And this is also true for when you make Kirby big. He will no longer have to swim in the water, and won't swim after he reverts back to his normal size until you jump out and then jump back in. It's odd that you have to reset it, but so it goes. If we're talking about oddities though, watch what happens when I reset training mode at this specific transition. Notice anything odd in the background? Here, how about in the frame by frame option? For some reason, a part of the background gets totally removed. When I pause, it goes black. When I unpause, that space gets filled with whatever was in front of it at that time, be it the other buildings or my character. I was testing around with this for a bit, but in all my testing, this only occurred when I reset training mode at this specific transition. And it sticks around every time I reset training mode afterwards. However, if you let the stage continue going through all of its cycles, the background will eventually get fixed and revert back to normal. The cause of this? Unfortunately, I'm stumped. The only hypothesis I can provide is that in this transition, the part of the stage behind what you see gets unrendered or something like that. So the camera can fit just nicely or whatever. And when you reset training mode, this doesn't get re-rendered. Next up, Donovan25 says that the Duck of Duck Hunt T-poses when cargo grabbed. And yes, quite thoroughly, the duck is asserting his dominance, as his dog companion is being comforted by the big ape as he sobs in DK's burly arms. Truly, nature is beautiful, and the King of Flight is there to top it off, like a cherry on a cake. Oh, King of Flight. King of Fight. King of Fighters. Bluetark the Blue states how, on the King of Fighters stage, a frozen opponent will not break the walls. A full PK freeze right next to the wall won't do anything. Due to the nature of this, PK freeze won't be able to kill anyone anytime soon. Mario will just keep bouncing off the walls like that. However, this isn't to say PK freeze, or any freezing move, will never kill. At high enough percents, the knockback will be so great that Mario will go to the top of the blast zone and get KO'd that way. But this one fact alone brings up another question, one that, orangutan emoji person in my Discord server once brought up. Does King of Fighters have a ceiling? We discussed it quite a bit in my server. My first thought was in regards to the nature of the walls of this stage. When you throw an item at the walls, the item will disappear. So in my mind, if there was a ceiling and you threw an item into it, it would also disappear. However, since the beam sword fell back down, that would make me think there's no ceiling, right? Of course, that's not good enough. And in fact, the testing was way easier. Look at what happens when Lucas gets the rocket belt and jumps up as high as he can. You'll see him perform an animation akin to bonking your head on the ceiling, much like how my mother did to me as a child, correct? To make it even more obvious, I got high up and used PK Thunder Tackle directly upwards. In doing so, you hear Lucas very obviously slam into something. These two things are enough to show me that there is indeed a ceiling on King of Fighters. So in my mind, the way the stage works is that it's surrounded by a box. The length of the box is what we see on the sides, the walls that we can get launched through. The bottom is probably either under the stage or just is the stage. And the top of it is very high up, so high that the roof blast zone comes in before the ceiling, around here. And it makes total sense. Without this ceiling, it's possible that people could just fly high enough and go over the walls on the side. So it's really just a safety measure. Finally, for this video, Juge Taranja asked me a great question regarding Game & Watch and assist trophies. In my last facts video, I pointed out how when someone gets thrown by Mr. Game & Watch, the thing he juggles is their stock icon. In combination with this fact, some people also learned for the first time that you can indeed grab assist trophies. At least most of them. So the question arises, what appears when you throw the assist trophy? And as it turns out, nothing really. You just sort of juggle them. They aren't given any unique icons, or even a symbol of the assist trophy. You just toss their model around awkwardly. It is a little disappointing, but at least we know, right? Speaking of knowing things, now you know many things. Congrats, after watching this video, you're actually a certified genius in all things. That is my job after all. Now, get out there and show the world what you've learned today. Remember that you need at least 2,000 hours of community service in order to pass this course. Stay casual, and I'll see you next time.